destroyed a Polaroid in my face, found it in perfect condition. For context, I have a Polaroid wall on my shelf with at least 20 pics, but never any dupes. If you know Polaroids, you would have to take 2 pics to get the same extra copies. Never have, even for group pics. My boyfriend and I were going through a rough patch, and it does not validate his actions at all. But he decided to rip off 2 pictures from my wall that was from my birthday because of the events that followed on that trip. He ripped them up in front of my face. It was a very heated moment, but it was crumpled to the best you can ruin a Polaroid. The black film part was even peeling/crumbling off where the image gets printed. During this entire ordeal, I'm texting my best friend about what he's doing. I took pictures of the Polaroids before he took them from me and destroyed them. He tossed them in my trash, and this is the part that gets me. I went back in my trash and saved them. Those were my cherished memories, and I am painfully sentimental. Also, I felt like if I kept them, I was standing up for myself in a way. So I know I was on thin ice if he found out I saved them. I put them in my makeup bag for the time being until I tossed them into one of my drawers. So a couple days pass and I'm thinking I have to find those Polaroids, because if he found them, it would be a whole repeat. I'm looking in my drawers and I find them in perfect condition along with my other pictures. I'm tweaking at this point, trying to find a way to fact check they were the same Polaroids. So I go back to the texts I sent my best friend, and sure enough, the Polaroids match the ones I sent him. I look in the makeup bag I hid them in, and I still see the small pieces of the black film that got ripped up. To this day, I cannot find the crumpled or destroyed Polaroids. I haven't obviously been able to validate this with my partner, since, to his knowledge, those pictures don't exist anymore. I know there weren't any dupes. I know he looked through that exact pile I had found them in to find those pictures after I tried to hide them before he got his hands back on them. I just don't know if it was such a high-intensity moment that something shifted. I don't know. What makes me not doubt myself is the fact I have texts from that night, including pictures of the Polaroids before he did it, since I was sending him updates on our situation/fight in real time. This best friend also went on this birthday trip with me from where the pics were took, so he knew which ones I was talking about. Ideas? Similar stories? I lost something and found it in a completely different spot. I was in my bathroom and I had a ring on my hand that I placed in my bag. When I went to get it out while still in the same bathroom, I found it wasn't there. I emptied the bag out, like I literally flipped it upside down, and searched all over the floor, and I still couldn't find it. I gave up and went to lay down, and a few hours later I moved my bag, which was completely closed and still was, and lo and behold, there it was right under the bag. I don't even know how this could have happened. I'm genuinely so confused. I don't own 2 of the same rings, and I know I put it in my bag because I made sure specifically. The bag does not have a hole. Unexplained sound. This isn't a dramatic story, but it still creeps me out years later when I think about it. One time, I was alone at home. My husband and daughter were out for the day. I was having lunch in the kitchen and getting ready to leave for work. The house was quiet, and I was reading on my phone while eating. I then heard the distinct sound of a cell phone starting an outgoing phone call. The sound came from around the corner from the hall leading into the kitchen. Being in a relaxed state, my first thought was that it was my husband walking towards the kitchen. But then I remembered he was already at work for the day, and I had dropped my daughter off at school. I froze. My heart started racing, and I listened intensely. The sound disappeared, as in the phone call didn't continue. It was only the initial dialing out. 3-tone sound? Do only Android phones make this sound? 1 or 2 rings? I can't remember exactly. And then dead silence. I put 911 into my phone ready to dial out. I stayed in a state of frozen fear for quite a few minutes, listening, expecting someone to make some kind of noise, as I was sure someone else was in the house at this point. The hall leading to the kitchen was also the way to the front door to leave, so I was essentially trapped. As the minutes went by and the dead silence continued, I needed to do something. and I needed to get to work. I grabbed a broom and called out, "Hello." I steeled myself and went into the hall. There was nobody in the house. I checked everywhere, every closet, every room. I left to go to work but stayed creeped out the entire day. My husband rechecked the house when he came home. We've had no other incidents or any evidence of something like an attic squatter, which was also checked. Where did my friend go? I started a new job a few months ago. I met David, and we instantly vibed. He showed me around the office, helped me whenever I had a plethora of new person questions, and we sat and had lunch together one of the days. This man was literally a few feet away from me. I could study his features. He sat in my office a few times when he had free time. Again, I saw his face clearly. All of this happened in the same week. The next week, a new face stands at my door, excited to see me and asking about my weekend. I didn't recognize him and must have looked confused because I saw his face drop. I almost asked if I knew him, but it was too awkward to. I figured it's someone I met briefly the week before. I went to David's office at lunch to ask him about the coworker. But instead of David, I found the coworker in David's chair, acting like he belongs there. He would have been startled to be discovered in someone's office, door closed if it weren't his. I played it off casually, trying not to look confused again, just made small talk and left, scratching my head, might I add. At the staff meeting, everyone was calling the coworker David and carrying on like that's always been David. I swear on my life that's not the man I met in my first week. David had brown eyes, brown hair, and was thin. This coworker has blue eyes and is stocky. The hair color is the same, but not the styling. Even their clothing styles are different. I was in so much disbelief that I actually studied the thumbnail on his email profile picture, looking for any signs of old David. The new David only greets me in passing, but nothing further. He doesn't stop by my office on his breaks or interact with me outside of the polite hi in the mornings. I don't blame him because from his perspective, he probably thought I was standoffish when I didn't recognize him. I want to tell someone badly because I'm so confused, but who could I tell without sounding crazy? I've had no recent falls, no substance use or prescribed medication. I don't drink or smoke. I'm healthy and fit in my 30s. I have no other explanation for this. I'm dumbfounded and still trying to process it. Nothing else at work or at home is out of the ordinary. I see old David's face clearly when I think about him. I don't understand how a completely different human is living his life, and nobody but me seems to be aware. This experience is single-handedly the most confusing thing to have ever happened to me. I am adamant that new David is not the man I befriended in my first week. Thoughts? Mysterious stone that splits, disappears, and reappears over the course of several years. So here is my story, which spans several years. When I was a teenager, don't remember the exact age, maybe around 16, I bought a moonstone at a sales booth at a fair. For whatever reason, I left it on a bathroom shelf over the course of several days. One morning, I found the stone cut in half in its usual place. In theory, it could have fallen to the floor and split. I was confused about how this had happened and asked my mom, wondering if she had dropped it and somehow only put half of it back on the shelf. She said she had no idea and had neither dropped it nor put it back up. I searched the bathroom for the other half, but never found it. I even looked in the cat's litter box. My mom said she hadn't vacuumed that day, so it couldn't have been sucked up by the machine. One could maybe come up with explanations, but they all seemed very unlikely, and the missing half of the stone was never found anywhere. I kind of shrugged it off, although I sometimes told someone about it, as I always considered it strange. I kept the remaining half of the stone and stored it in a decorative glass jar for several years, with many other gemstones. Besides the white moonstone, I only owned like 2 other bigger stones of a totally different color, while the rest were tiny, so no way to somehow confuse any of them. I would look at the stones from time to time. At around the age of 22, I was living in my own apartment, alone, and one day emptied the glass jar to have a look at all of the stones again. Strangely, the moonstone was missing, and I was really confused about how I could have lost it. Again, I shrugged it off as a weird coincidence. thinking I must just have somehow lost the other half now. Time passed. I was still living in the mentioned apartment. Someday I was lying awake at night and had one of these moments, musing about stuff like magic and manifestation, wondering if there could be any truth to it all. Over the years, I had experienced quite a few strange things, but at the same time, I always refused to believe in anything that was not scientifically proven. That night, however, I concentrated very strongly on asking the universe to please give me a sign if it could hear me and if any of it was true. I remembered the moonstone and basically told the universe, if you can hear me, let the moonstone reappear, thinking that if I looked into the glass jar in the morning and it was back, there would be no way I could ever doubt the existence of some kind of magic. When I woke up the next morning, I remembered my little dialogue with the universe from the night before. By the light of day, it seemed really stupid. Kind of rolling my eyes at myself, I thought, I know the damn stone won't be there of course, but let's just take a quick look at the jar. Yes, it was back. Well, the cut-in-half version of it, just resting on top of all the other gemstones in the jar, very prominently, as if it had always been there. I must have stood there like an idiot, staring at it for several minutes. The weird story had now gained yet another chapter to every now and then tell someone about. I still own the stone. Since that last time, nothing ever happened again. I'm almost 40 now, but part of me has always been wondering if someday, somehow, the missing half might mysteriously reappear. I always thought it would be a great story finale if I someday met a man who owns the other half. I have to admit, I'm still skeptical about magic being real. If there is something to it, the universe is probably a bit pissed at me now, but, well, rationality just kicked in again. I mean, there has to be a very mundane, very logical explanation for it all. Right? Right? Would love to hear your thoughts, and especially if something like this ever happened to someone else. English is not my first language, so please excuse any mistakes. I hope I can share these photos. Author of that post added link with photos you see on screen now. Added a pen for size comparison. The other picture shows where it's split from above. Reappearing movie tickets. Glitch or ghost? I was a teenager and my mom won VIP tickets on the radio to opening night of one of the newer Star Wars movies. Both of us being giant nerds, we were super excited. The day of the premiere comes and I've got the tickets. They were big, laminated physical tickets, probably about the size of a brochure, pre-smartphone. I get in the passenger side front seat and put the tickets in the door slot, the side panel by the floor that sometimes has a cup holder. IDK what to call it. I can clearly see them in there. We drive off with some time to spare. On the way to the movie theater, we would be passing by my great-aunt's house. She had dementia and her sister had just passed away, so we thought of visiting really quick since we had a bit of time before the movie started. My mom parked in front of her house and told me to double-check the start time of the movie so we knew how long we could stay. So I reached down for the tickets, and they aren't there. I panic. I look everywhere under the floor mat, the glove box, the back seat, and that damn side compartment where I just knew I'd put them. I got out of the car, opened the door, and looked into the compartment where there was better lighting. I ran my fingers under the lip of it, and it was for sure empty. They weren't stuck to the side of it or something. The only thing I could think of was that maybe the car door was open when I dropped the tickets in and I actually missed, and they fell into the driveway instead. I was devastated. We didn't have enough time to go back home and get them, and since it was pre-smartphone era, it's not like there was another way to prove we had tickets other than the physical ticket itself. So we went in and visited with my great-aunt for 30 minutes or so, longer than the 10 we'd planned on, just to say hi. When we left, I got in the car and shut the door and saw a flutter of movement by the door. Those freaking tickets were sitting right where I knew I'd put them, clear as day. My jaw dropped. I picked them up and showed my mom. She was just as baffled as she had looked for them too. After a moment, she asks me to check the time and see if we would still make the movie. We made it just in time. They made it clear you wouldn't be let in after the movie started. But I'm not sure why. My great-aunt's sister had just passed away, and they had lived together, so my mom thinks it was her sister trying to get us to stay for a longer visit. The only other explanation I have would be a glitch. I think about this every so often and think that there must be a logical explanation, but I've never been able to come up with one. Something weird happened while at a hotel, and I've been trying to figure this out now since over a year. I think I have finally come to the right community. Please help. I followed the posting flowchart, and it is a yes for sharing this incident I experienced. And I have gone over the rules, and I feel like I am in the right place. However, if I am not, please kindly direct me. This is driving me crazy. So in January 2024, I went to a hotel in Niagara Falls, Canadian side. I had my 10-year-old son with me. I had a room with a spectacular view of the falls. It was a hotel closet to the falls, and floor 12, in case that's useful information for some reason for some people. The room had 2 beds. My son fell asleep on one and me on the other. I don't recall what time we fell asleep, sometime after 9 p.m. I find myself suddenly waking up as I sensed that I was getting too much light coming from the falls. Hence, I mentioned the view. I sleep in the dark. I look over to the other bed, but my son is not there. I assume he is in the bathroom, from where I sense a very dim light filtering from under the door that was shut. Before I check the bathroom, I go up to the window and close off the curtains. As I am walking to the window, I have to pass by the entire other bed where my son was supposed to be. And from the light filtering in from the window, I can see it is empty and the covers are crumpled. After I close the curtains, I go to the bathroom and I finally notice that the bathroom lights are off. The light filtering out is too white, whereas the bathroom lights were yellow shade. I didn't think about this when I first looked over when I didn't see my son. Plus, all this happened so quickly, so I push the bathroom door open and I don't see him. I notice the tub curtain closed, and I see a small rectangular light filtering in there, the size of a cell phone. It was pulsating. I freak the f*** out and feel paralyzed. I call out for my son. He doesn't answer. I spend maybe hardly 5 to 6 more seconds there, though it felt like much longer, but it definitely wasn't. In these mere seconds, I am contemplating whether to rip away the curtain or not. The hotel curtains aren't exactly opaque, so all I saw was that pulsating light, but no outlined shadow of a body, a 10-year-old body to be specific. Only the rectangular light. In these few seconds, my mind races and reasons. Some homeless person got in the hotel room. Oh man, my 10-year-old has discovered porn. Edited to add, I am editing in mid-post to clarify the above, as many are getting too hung up about this thought I stated. I wrote this whole post in one shot, as things came to mind. Raw. So I see and understand where clarification can be helpful. I think many are getting too hung up that I was pretty convinced that someone was there. No. I was trying to convince myself that someone was there, even though I could see that there wasn't, because the alternative was too crazy. That was a split-second thought later, counteracted by the fact that I didn't see any figure or shadow, but there was enough light for that due to the pulsating light in there. In other words, the tub was empty. And had there been a figure for real, I suspect I would have startled them enough to charge at me, or make some noise, or move, thereby giving away their existence. Like I had mentioned that I thought someone could be there because I didn't want to believe that I just witnessed a floating light. The former is more me trying to reason with myself than the latter, which is even more crazy. Additionally, perhaps someone with a psychological background can explain better how fear actually works. It isn't always rational. I rush back out before I could decide my next steps, and lo and behold, my son is on the bed where he's supposed to be. I also hear his tablet. He's watching a show. I ask him, "Where were you?" He goes, "What do you mean?" I press on more impatiently. "Where were you like just now?" He responds with, "I've been here the whole time. I don't understand what you're asking." I look back at the bathroom. It appears dark to me. I feel so fucked up that I do nothing. I am frozen. I tell my son, "Go to sleep." And I rush under the covers on my own bed, waiting anxiously to hear something or someone from the bathroom, as I clutch my phone tightly. At some point, I fell asleep. I awakened the next morning and immediately rushed to the bathroom to find evidence of an unwelcome entry from this alleged homeless person. Nothing there, of course. I am insanely flustered the whole time, and all the way home. For 2 to 3 days after, I try to reason with myself about what could have happened. I even spoke with my doctor, who told me that I was probably from the extreme stress I am under, hence the reason for this hotel stay in the first place. But 8 have gone through worse, much worse things in the past, as compared to my current stressors, which are bad, of course, but not my first rodeo in hell, let's just say. I eventually asked my son if he was in the bathtub at the hotel that night. He looks at me as weirdly as possible for any 10-year-old boy and goes, "I wasn't. Why would I be in a bathtub? In the dark?" This went on back and forth for a while as I tried to convince him to tell me the truth, aka what I think I wanted to hear and be put out of my misery quickly, and how he got back to the bed so fast without me seeing or hearing, and that he won't get in trouble if he tells me. Well, needless to say, I felt so foolish afterwards, interrogating a 10-year-old with this absurdity. Hence, started my journey to get to the bottom of this. I considered contacting the hotel, but after this conversation with my son, I struggled to try to explain my thoughts. It's not to say that nice hotels can't have homeless people squatting. However, hotel was not at all busy due to the time and location, and there was always more than enough staff there, and only one way to get in out. And here's the kicker. When I was booking the hotel, I accidentally booked it. There are 2 by this company there, and I accidentally booked the wrong location. Only when I put it in the GPS and passed by the location I was intending for, did I realize this mistake. Can anyone shed any light on this? Any similar experiences? I will try to shorten this, but right now I just wrote exactly as I thought back. Any help is appreciated. I have had deja vu and premonitions, but nothing like this. Thank you. Pharmacy suddenly became a pizza place. Just in case I mess up with the spelling, English is not my first language. I'm on my mobile, and also I'm not in the US. Today I had a doctor's appointment. Nothing serious, just allergies and the like, so I drove to where he has his practice. Upon arrival, I noticed the place had no parking, but right across the narrow street, there was a very well-known chain pharmacy in this country that actually did. It had a sign that said, "Customers only parking." So I stopped, blinkers on for a sec by the curb to ponder whether I should park, then go buy some Tylenol, and then cross over to the doctor's office. A few minutes later, I decided against it and, since I had some time, went around the area looking for street parking somewhere close. A difficult task, since in most streets are for residents with a special credential. A few minutes later, luckily enough, I found a parking spot that didn't require said credential, so I parked and I walked a few blocks to the doctor's office. The doctor saw me. I spent probably a maximum of 40 minutes in the building and gave me a prescription. I commented, "Oh cool, there's a pharmacy right across the street. I'll grab the meds there." He replied, "Yeah, awesome. Let me know how it goes." I walk out of the building, aiming for the pharmacy, but when I look up, instead of the pharmacy, there was a Papa John's corner shop. I was completely flabbergasted. I stood on the corner looking around the area, and even the pavement details were the same as when I had stopped to think if I should park in that same spot in the pharmacy. The same cars were parked in all the other places. The street number was the same. I don't know, I'm still a bit in shock. Strange glitches have happened to me before, but not this evidently. Well, that's it. Thoughts? Bus time glitch. This happened last year when I had a doctor's appointment at 2 p.m. I left home at 1:08 p.m. to walk to the bus stop, which takes about 2 mins. I waited at the bus stop for a couple of mins before the bus came. I unfortunately caught the wrong bus, which completely missed out the stop I wanted, so I got off the next stop, which takes about 12 mins on a good day, which meant that I had to go back on myself to get to where I wanted to go. I phoned my mom to let her know the deal as soon as I got off the bus at 1:12 p.m., according to my phone timestamp, as I crossed over the road at the traffic lights to get to the bus stop to go back on myself. When I got to the other bus stop, I looked at the electronic bus timetable that was on the inside of the bus shelter, and I was still on the phone to my mom and said, "The next bus is at 1:22 p.m., so I don't have long to wait." I got the bus that I wanted and phoned Mom again, 1:30 p.m. according to my phone timestamp, as soon as I got off the bus. I had to walk down to the doctor's, which takes about 10 minutes from the bus stop, as I have to cross at more traffic lights, and they can take a couple of minutes to change. I arrived at the doctor's and sat outside for a bit, enjoying the sunshine and chatting to Mom, but it was cold but dry. I then decided to go inside for my appointment. I went to reception and checked in. I looked at the clock and the time on the TV screen, that also flashes up and tells you which room to go into when it's your turn, said 1:30 p.m. I was like, huh? I then checked my phone and it also said 1:30 p.m. When I finished my appointment, I phoned my mom and told her, and she was like, how? I'm still confused on what happened, but at least I was still early for my appointment. Different doors on the same floor. This just happened to me. My wife and I are staying in a hotel tonight that is over 10 stories tall. After checking in, we took the elevator up to the 7th floor. Exiting the elevator, we walked to the right and followed the numbers on the wall to our room, which was actually behind the elevator shaft. 3 elevators. The elevators were in the middle of the hallway. In other words, the hallway went around the elevators. Anyway, the room was actually on the other side of the elevator shaft, so it would have been shorter if we had exited left instead of right. But no matter. We found our room and entered. Within a few minutes, my wife remembered that she left her laptop in the car, so I left the room to go get it. Upon re-entering the hotel lobby, I walked straight to the elevators and entered the middle elevator. I pushed the 7th floor button. When the doors opened, I walked out and turned to the left because I remembered that our room was that direction. Then it happened. As I walked around the corner of the elevator wall, I noticed that the room that I was sure was ours was 10 numbers too high, 716 instead of 706. No matter, I just figured that I walked too far, so I turned left because I knew that the room numbers would get smaller as I walked to the left. Unfortunately, a cleaning lady was standing in the hallway with her cart blocking the way to my room. She was talking to someone through an open door that I believed to be my room. She was standing to the right of the door, so I just decided to walk all the way around the elevator shaft and come from the other side. When I finally turned the corner, I was shocked. Not only was the cleaning lady and her cart gone, I lost sight of her for maybe 15 seconds, but as I walked down the hallway, I came to my room. It was exactly where I thought it was, just around the corner from the elevator shaft. A minute earlier, that room was 10 digits too high. And my wife said that she never saw a cleaning lady. She was wearing all black and speaking a different language. It wasn't Spanish because I speak Spanish. We're in Texas. I never saw her face. I watched a Carno clip. I think the driver was an NPC. A little less than a year ago, my sister and I had just finished helping our grandmother with some household chores, as she is in poor health and can't do much on her own. She lives in a large rural condo complex, 6 or 7 buildings with about 15 to 30 units, varying per building, with multiple driveways and intersections connecting the parking lots. There isn't any designated parking, so I parked my car as close as I could to her unit. When my sister and I were about to get in my car, another vehicle pulled up and parked directly behind us, so we couldn't leave. The passenger side door being just inches away from my bumper. I don't remember the exact make and model, but I do remember it was a gray SUV, late 2000s or early 2010s. A slightly overweight, middle-aged blonde woman stepped out of the driver's side and briefly apologized to us for boxing us in, claiming she was just unloading her groceries and would only be a minute. She was clearly alone. It was broad daylight, and there were other people around at the time, so the last thing I expected was foul play. We said it was fine, since we weren't in a hurry, and got in my car. I started it since she said she wouldn't be long. No problem, right? There were a set of concrete stairs adjacent to the parking lot we were in that led to the nearest building, the one my grandma's unit is in, just feet away from where we were parked. I thought she would go down them, but for some reason, she didn't. After she opened the hatch of her car and had a bag in each hand, we watched her slowly walk all the way across the parking lot to a totally different building, not even remotely close to where either of us were parked, heading inside one of the units on the complete opposite side of the parking lot. I didn't think much of it at first, but I brought it up to my sister that it was odd that she parked so far away from her destination. She mentioned that she could just be making a delivery for someone and not actually live there, being unfamiliar with the area. It was a valid point, but this woman was clearly walking a linear path to this far-off building and didn't appear to be looking around at the other units, like she was searching for something as she walked. Not to mention, the parking lot was far enough away from most of the buildings where you couldn't see the numbers on the doors. To add one more layer of legitimacy, there were notably plenty of vacant parking spots that were much closer to her destination. In fact, the whole lot just happened to be half empty at the time, and after bringing those points up to my sister, she shrugged it off and told me I was overthinking it. Granted, I wasn't about to believe that this woman blocked us from leaving on purpose. But she did come back and make another few trips before she was finished, going back the same way she came multiple times. I was starting to get annoyed as we sat there for several minutes with her car still behind us. I'm not sure exactly how long it was, but it was long enough for me to shut my car back off. When I saw the woman finally come back and get in her car, I started mine up again, pulling out right behind her as soon as she moved. It seemed like my sister was right about her being there for a delivery, as she was heading for the exit the same way we were. That, or she did live there and just had somewhere else to be after putting her groceries away. Anyway, that didn't matter, because what came after shocked me to my core. I had followed her through the parking lot and down a driveway that eventually leads to the main road. There are a ton of kids that live in the complex, so the residents are adamant about people driving slow in the area. Plenty of speed bumps and slow watch for children signs. That said, the woman in the SUV came to a stop sign and turned right, turning behind one of the buildings at the edge of the driveway just out of my line of sight. But when I came to the same stop sign and turned the same right, she was gone. Like, not where she should have been. Her car was out of my line of sight for what should have been a couple seconds when she turned that right, but when I made the same right, it was nowhere to be seen. There are no other roadways this car could have taken at this point. This is just a straight part of the driveway that leads to the main road. It's also lined with several speed bumps, but even if the speed bumps weren't there, and this woman decided to floor it as soon as she made the turn, I would have had more than enough time to see her taillights before she turned onto the main road. There is no logical explanation as to how this could have happened. I'm not a big believer in the paranormal, but the complexity of it even made me rethink if there was some inexplicable reason she parked behind me in the first place and kept me and my sister there for as long as she did. My head was racing the whole ride home, and I couldn't stop talking about it to my sister, who agreed it was weird but clearly wasn't as spooked as I was. She's always been better at keeping her cool than me. But this was different. Did I see, or not see, something I should or shouldn't have? It still haunts me to this day. But perhaps what bothers me the most is that I still bring it up to my sister on occasion, and every time I do, she still has the same attitude as the day it happened, often brushing it off as just our minds playing tricks on us. I don't know if she's in denial or just playing it cool for my sake, but I know what I saw.